The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find. The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style.
Retired Colonel Kenneth Juergens, commander of Harvey C. Noon, Post 954. It's great to have you on the Big H Podcast.
Thanks, Mike. It's my honor. Very humbling.
My honor, and thank you for your service. I can't say that enough. Whenever I talk to a military man or a woman, it's just...
I know. I feel the same way with them. That's why I like the Legion. I like what I'm doing now because I'm still within that family of veterans and helping them out.
Yeah, and you do have an extensive military career. But let's go. You recently, I read an article in the West Side News that you received the Legionnaire of the Year award. Tell me a little bit about your workings there at the Post.
Yeah, the American Legion is a national organization. And when I first moved back into the area, we had a small post, and I kept driving by it. And I had joined the national organization, but I wasn't affiliated with the local chapter. So, my wife said, hey, why don't you think about joining, and get involved in the community here? Because she knew I liked community stuff, and in particular with veterans. So I went in one time. It was a small bar, and they're all looking at me like, who the heck are you? And I'm like, hi, I'm Ken Juergens, just moved here and interested in joining. Then all of a sudden I was like, oh, come on in. And ever since then, I've been involved with it. And at the time, like most legions, membership was down. People weren't getting involved. And it unbelievably almost sold. I mean, they were looking to sell and close the Legion. And luckily, we had a courageous guy who was actual commander for 10 years. Normal span of command are only supposed to be a year, 2 years. But because of the time and the effort it takes, people just don't want to do it, for various reasons. And I saw an opportunity to help out, and I became his deputy. And he was a much older person, and like I said, it was very courageous because I'm sure he had better things to do than trying to keep the Legion alive, along with his wife. And I got involved, and slowly but surely got elected as commander, and we kind of saved the post from going down under. We increased membership. We're the number one in the county and in the district for membership. So this past year, we were 133% on our membership rate. Mm-hmm. And the building needed a lot of upgrades. We've done that. And then programs. We have to serve the community. So one of the things we do, there's two big events in Churchville. One started during my watch, along with the Girl Scouts and Erin Masick. She was really the catalyst to get it started, but it's called Wreaths Across America. And what happens is in Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C., there's an organization that puts wreaths, holiday wreaths on the graves of the soldiers in Arlington. And it started growing because so many people saw it and thought it was a great idea that they did it. They want to do it nationally for other cemeteries. And the program expanded, and Erin went ahead and asked if we could get involved. They said yes. And in conjunction with the Legion, we started that going. So every December, we have a big ceremony. We invite the local media in. People donate money for the wreaths, and then we put wreaths on over 600 veterans. They're buried in both cemeteries and the one in Riga. There's a separate cemetery there. So 3 cemeteries. Big ceremony, very important to remember. And we have Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts involved, local community churches, everybody. And the second thing is Memorial Day. So we put the Memorial Day parade on for for the town and the village, and that's a big deal for us because that's remembering the veterans who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And then we do other things like Veterans Day. Of course, we have a like I said before when we were talking offline, was Chamber of Commerce has a golf tournament every summer that sponsors the money and the funds go to sponsoring a veterans luncheon on Veterans Day that's free for the veterans and their spouses. And it's wonderful. We get like 100 people in our Legion Hall, and we recognize them and their service. So Veterans Day is the day, I always say, is the day you recognize veterans for their service. Memorial Day is not a thank you for your service. It's thank you to the veteran, who passed away, and remembering them and their service. So that's really the two big muscle movements, and then the other not as much, but just as important, Veterans Day. And then we have community projects that we do. We supported a platoon out of the 10th Mountain Division, Fort Drum, that's out here in New York. They were deployed over a year in Iraq, and we supplied care packages for them. And we, every other month or every 3 months, we go to the Batavia VA hospital and we play bingo there. We support them in bingo. And, I was telling our members the other day, we get more out of it than I think they do because it's so humbling to hear their stories. I talked to one guy that was in Battle of the Bulge in World War II. Sadly, he passed away. I didn't even realize it until the last time we went. And I asked, where's Jack? And he said, Jack, not here no more. But I talked to him all the time. And I was a big fan of Bands of Brother. And I was asking, was it really that cold? He goes, yes. It was that cold. And I was like, oh my God, how did you, wow, how did you do it? And it was just a typical soldier, did I have a choice? I was there and we fought and did well. So that's why I say we get more out of it. So we go up there, we play bingo with them. We've sponsored veterans that are in financial problems. We also donate to the Special Olympics, and we do. I mean, it'd be a long list but it became a more vibrant post, and it's been going really good. And I invite anybody. The other thing we started that was new. They used to have a Sons of the American Legion back in like 1977, I think. When I was in high school in Hilton, maybe a little later, but they. The Sons of the American Legion is sons of grandparents or parents that served. So in the Legion, you have to be a veteran. You have to have served in the armed forces in any capacity, National Guard, arms, or reserves, or active duty. The sons, you just have to have a relationship to a veteran, through those two means. And it died down. So we reinstituted it. Thankfully, we didn't have to get a charter again because we already had the charter. So a really great man, Ron Torcello, in honor of his father, because that's why most of the sons joined. He volunteered to become squadron commander. And the sons, the strategy is, veterans are probably, if you think of the pyramid, we're kind of small up here, but people that related those veterans is a much bigger base. And that's how you grow the Legion,
Okay.
Is through the sons.
Okay.
So we're trying to do that. That's something new that we've done. And we also have the auxiliary, which is the component also that is related to the Legion and is part of the family support group that helps us. It used to be ladies, but they've changed it to where both sexes can now join. And it's a very good, robust place to help us in our mission. They're there to help the Legion accomplish its missions. So I was fortunate that somebody in the Post nominated me for this. It went to the county. I somehow in the magic fairy dust it became. And then after that, they nominated me to the district, and I also was awarded the district Legion of the Year, which is not just Monroe County, but all the surrounding counties for the 7th District. So it was quite an honor. And for me, it's just doing more service to the country and the service. And I'm probably at the sweet spot, if we talk about sports. I'm retired. I got the time to do it. it's harder if you've got a full-time job and you try to do this, with all the things we have to get accomplished. So, kind of right person at the right time. And I'm always looking, as part of my leadership philosophy, is you're not successful if you don't have a backup plan for the future generations to take over.
Mm-hmm.
Because, once Ken Juergens gets too tired or too old to do this, I don't want to just say, okay, things over with, fun. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm always encouraging the young people to take over and give them opportunities. And we've done that. So, for instance, our vice commander, he's a young gentleman. He's Ron Torcello's son, Tony Torcello, that served in the Army. And he's my vice commander. And he took over the entire Flag Day ceremony. So we had the Girl Scouts, once again, Eric Masek, I guess she can be a famous name here, but her daughter, Alessa, she did her gold award, built a fire pit for us where we retire the flags on the 14th of June every year. And Tony took over that whole ceremony. So I kind of try to give them things to do, so they will feel, first of all, it calculates them into the system, but also gives them duties and stuff to where they can see, yeah, I can do this, and you grow the bench. So that's one of the things I would like to lead to Legion, is grow the bench.
How many years have you been commander there?
Probably 3, 4, 5 years. I was the deputy before that, or the vice before that.
And you were saying that the building needed some upgrades. What are some upgrades that you did to the area?
We redid the hall upstairs. The bar has been remodeled. The downstairs, we had a game room that was basically a storage room, and we cleaned that all out, made it into a functional game room for the veterans or families. So when we have rentals or we have vets come with family, we have the little children go there and play in the room. We redid the floor downstairs. We redid the bathrooms. We just did a big renovation. We had a veteran come in one time that tried to use our bathroom facilities, and we got him through, but he barely could fit in everything. So it was clear that we needed to do an upgrade. So we did that. We funded it on our own, and we did it. We had Legion members do it. We got one guy, Wayne McConnell, that's unbelievable. He's going to be 85, and he does all the construction. He helped me put in my mother-in-law's deck in the background. I'm like, Wayne, I hope I'm like you when I'm 85, but he's amazing. So he and a crew from the Legion redid the bathroom, and now we have a compliant bathroom facility for the handicap in upstairs. So that was a big thing. And then we redid all the floors upstairs, which was an incredible thing. And the next thing we're doing, we got 3 major muscle groups going on. Our steps going into the Legion are built from concrete. They're deteriorating. The handicap ramp, it's functional. It meets code barely. It might be close, but it's made out of wood. And a lot of people complain that it's hard to push people up on it. So we, in conjunction with the town, we got some funds from the county. We got a grant to redo the steps. So we're going to reconstruct the steps, and we're also going to do the handicap ramp to make it accessible for our veterans and their families and for the handicap. And then the other thing is we have a chairlift right now. It goes from the downstairs bar game area to the upstairs, the main hall. And a lot of people, I'm finding out, can't use it with their wheelchair because they can't get out of the wheelchair, and you got to pick them up. But usually their partners are about as old as they are, and they can't do it. So we put in for a grant this year with New York State, and we're putting our finger, I should know any day now, but hopefully we'll put an elevator, replace it, tear down the stairs and put an elevator in there. So we'll have a fully functional handicap approved, which is very important because our veterans are getting older. Yeah. And you got guys and gals that are younger that unfortunately have been injured, and you want the place to be accessible. So we've done a lot of renovations on there.
Sounds like you have a lot of people with talent in your
Very fortunate. These guys, I don't know where they get the energy. They amaze me. But yeah, we do.
How many posts are there in the county?
Oh Now you're quizzing me on Monroe County stuff.
Yeah,
I
gonna
would
test
say
that
there
memory.
must be at least 25 posts. You know, the sad thing is they're coming and going. I mean, we had posts where they've combined themselves with others, like Rush Henrietta used to have two. Rush combined in with Henrietta, and we've lost a couple other posts from smaller towns and things like that nature. So it was really, there was a lot more posts back in the day, and now they're getting more consolidated. The big posts are Spencerport, Chili, Greece. Greece is immense. They do a lot of good work. They Special Olympics. They gave like $30,000. They do a polar bear jump in the lake or something, and they raise a lot of money. And then on the east side, we've got Webster. Webster's a big, and East Rochester is very popular. So I think there's about 25 million.
25. Now you're saying that first time you went into the post, people were like, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah,
What was the icebreaker for you?
Uh,
Did you pull up your
I
shirt
think
and show a battle scar?
no. Thank God, don't have any
I
of
know,
those.
I know.
I don't want those. But no, I think I walked in. It was kind of a weird moment because they all looked at me. You know how you walk in a bar and people don't know you, and they all know each other, and they just kind of drop their glass.
Right.
They look at, and I had to tell them, no, I'm retired Army. I'm interested in joining. I drive by you every day. Just curious what you guys do. I'm a member, but I belong to the national, post, the Albany Post, Post One. And I said, so what do I do? And then from there, I went to a couple of, they told me when the meetings were. So I went to a couple of meetings, and first time was kind of like, and there was only like 5 people at the meeting, so they were like, oh, and after that, it started just, they said, okay, yeah, you're regular. I transferred in, and then took off from there.
So, I mean, you were in the Army, I think, for 25 years. What were some talents that you took from the Army that you knew would help you in taking over a post command?
Um, Army is unbelievable crucible of leadership. I mean, you just have to. The situations, the unknowns, every day, what comes at you. So being able to respond, being innovative, knowing that you got to kind of lead by example, you got to show up and be there. Um, like I said, showing that you got a plan, a strategic plan, and also long term, short term. Clearly articulate your goals and what you want to get accomplished, and then explain why it's important. Just don't tell them you're doing it. You got to tell them this is why it's important. And I think just all the innate leadership situations they put you on that I don't really get surprised too much from what comes out, and I kind of know what we got to do, and then the thing, you got to know when you got to step up and when you got to sit back a little bit. Uh, Probably I step up too much, and I got to step back a little bit and let others. And I told you some of the things I'm trying to do that. But I think the Army just taught you how to have your presence and make people want to be there versus they have to be there. And of course, you don't have to be at the American Legion if you don't want to be, so you want to get people excited and see what you're doing, and you want to have an impact. You want to make sure that what you're doing is having an impact. If you're not having an impact, then why are you doing it? And you want to support the veterans. That's your core. And then you want to get the community, because there's a lot of people in the community that make up your organization, make up the community, and you want to be a part of that. You don't want to sit back and just be the bar. You want to be more than that.
Well, one of the reasons, besides your story of your career in the military, you're a graduate of Hilton High School from the class of 1978.
Good.
To look up a little bit, you were a yearbook editor. Tell me a little bit about your time in Hilton High School.
Okay, I loved Hilton. I am very fortunate to be a Hilton person, and I tell that to a lot of people throughout my life, that I started in a little upstate New York town. When I grew up, we were like I think we were close. We lost it in the 60s, but we were number one for apples. So I was always proud of being from the apples. And I remember going through the orchards. And, when I go back I grew up on Dunbar Road. And when I go by there, I see all the apple orchards gone. It's just amazing to me. But I was very proud that I was from a small town. All the other teams, particularly in the East, they thought we were farmers. So I remember in football season, all the parents got cowbells, and we'd ring the cowbells and just kind of put it in their face. And, I was lucky to be there. I was looking through my yearbook. I realized, we started the bleachers, the Friday night lights, we did all that in the football team. So growing up in Hilton is made me what I am, I think. I mean, just all the experience. There was just countless experiences. And I know it gets to be cliche, especially for my generation, but, we didn't have games like on, internet games and all that. Parents said, go outside and play. You went outside and played until the lights went down or the dinner bell rang, and then you come back. So you built forts, you did barrel boats, you went down the creeks, you had apple war fights and just hockey games when the pond flew over, the creek froze over, you go do that. So, I was fortunate my parents. I kind of like to, if I could go back, I'd like to start with my parents because that's how it all started with Hilton and my whole experience. So, both parents were immigrants to the United States. In fact, I'm an immigrant to the United States. My father came over from Germany. My mother came over from Scotland. They met in Toronto, and they had my brother, me, my sister, and my other sister, Stephanie. And then back then, it was very hard to get into the United States. There was requirements. So my dad had to have a skill that the U.S. wanted, and he had to had two companies that were sponsoring him. He couldn't just come here and just say, hey, I want to emigrate here because you're a great place. So he had Ford and Smith Corona. Smith Corona was in Cortland. Ford was in Detroit. And little did I realize I could have grew up in Michigan. He flipped a coin and New York won. And we moved to there. And, I reflect back to that kind of courage. I talked about that earlier. I can't imagine in my 20s moving to another country. I've been all over the world with the Army. I've been very fortunate, but I could never imagine leaving the United States and say, I'm going to be a citizen of this other country and raise my family and separate from my relatives and everything. But that's what both my parents did. And that was amazing. And they always told me when growing up, they wanted for the betterment of their children and their family. And it was a big, big legacy to live up to. And I took it to heart what they did. So my dad had an offer. My younger brother was born in Cortland, and then he had an offer from a company here in Rochester. We moved here, and he moved to Hilton, and that was back in, I think, 1965. And I think I was just entering kindergarten because I went to kindergarten in Hazel Jenkins. And my younger sister, Heather, was born here. And it wasn't until I was 15 that we had to wait that long, if you could believe it, to become citizens. And so I was 15 years old. I remember my mom was a very strong personality, very, very Scottish, very strict on us, particularly the two of us, the older ones. But we were at court, and, back in 75, it was bell bottoms, tidy T-shirts, long hair, and I'm waving an American flag with all these other immigrants, they were Chinese, different nationalities. And I'm looking at my mom and saying, I don't want to be here. I'm an American. I'm not Canadian. I don't know what you're talking about. And just hush, be quiet. You're in a solemn thing. You'll wave that flag until your arm breaks.
Right.
Okay. But thanks for their sacrifice. We came to Hilton, New York. So I've always felt very grateful because my life story could be very different if I grew up in Europe or I grew up in anywhere else but Hilton. So I feel very grounded because Hilton back then was extremely safe. Nobody closed their doors. Nobody, locked their doors.
Right.
Everybody would walk to school. You never felt unsafe, and so going back to Hilton and growing up, I had great teachers. I remember in middle school, I remember somebody talking about Joe Tolhurst.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was an amazing guy. I mean, just getting me interest in sports and stuff like that, teach me how to kick a football and calling you Jergy. He'd call you different nicknames and stuff. Uh, he was a great guy. And then just getting involved with sports. Sports was my life back then. Sports and academics. Classes were important because back in my family, we'd all have to go. It was funny. We'd line up and we have to show our report cards to my
Mm-hmm.
parents. My mom, and dad would be there, and they always said A's were like B's. B's were like C's. If you got a C, that was an F.
Right.
So don't
Right.
come home if you got. So we'd always go up there and show. So academics were important.
Mm-hmm.
So we got involved in wrestling. So of course I told you my brother Dave was really big in it with Clayton Barnard, and there was this thing called the Carter Street Gym. We used to go there in Irondequoit, and a really great coach. He's still alive, Frank Oliveri, unbelievable person. We used to go there and practice and everything. So talk about a leadership what sports could teach you. So my 8th grade year, I made the freshman team. So I thought, that's a big deal. I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
pretty good. I jumped up one. I was 0-8, didn't win a match. And then you got older brothers in the newspapers all the time. Don Roberts, Juergens, big, going for the states. And
Right.
they're like looking at me saying, are you really related?
Right.
You can't be his younger brother. I go, yeah, no, I am. But you suck. I'm like, I don't know why. I go home, I cry. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
And we went to Bishop Kearney, and there was a kid that was 0-8. So all my teammates were all like, you're going to win now. You have to win against this guy. You're both in there. We tied 0-0. I'm not kidding. We tied. And I thought I was going to quit. I said, that's it. I was much better in Pop Warner in football. I was much better in football. And we had a summer tournament, and I took second, and I cracked the code, and something turned. And all of a sudden, I started getting good at wrestling. And I don't know why, but once you win, I guess that changes your mindset. Mm-hmm. So it was a very important thing in sports to realize that. And then football, that was a hell of a ride too. That was not to badmouth the class before us, but they always seemed to have a difficult time winning, and they weren't very good. And we had incredible classmates. They were incredible. Charlie Nesbitt,
Mm-hmm.
Phil Bresson, who was all Rochester, Craig Noack, Larry Bogner, a quarterback, Bill Benedict.
Yep.
We had a bunch of people that were Chuck Allen, Brett Daggs. And we always did good. We went through Pop Warner, and I didn't know that. I didn't remember the coach's name until I heard your guest the other day say his name. I was like, yeah, that was his name. But I remember that guy clearly, and he was a winning attitude. So I guess I'm talking about coaches are really important. And our freshman year, we were the best. JV, we were the best. And then junior year, we sucked.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't win it. And then my senior year, we won. We were 8-1. We were the most successful team up to, I'm not talking current people, because the Hilton teams of late in the 90s, they were just off the charts. Mm-hmm. But back then, that was a big deal. So we were 8-1. We were co-Western Division champs. Same thing in wrestling. We did very, very well. My senior year, we got to be 12th in the state. We were co-Western Division or co-county champs with East Rochester, and all those things. You see it in the movies. It's kind of like that. You're just the camaraderie going out on Friday nights or Saturday, and just the sports, and then the teachers and the enthusiasm and the leadership that I was exposed to at a young age through coaches or leaders like. I don't know if people talk about Mr. Garno, but yes. Mr. Garno was a huge guy in the school. I think my saddest day was finding out, because I remember our last homeroom or something. He said, "You class of 1970, you're the finest Hilton High School graduate class we've ever had in Hilton." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Oh God, Mr. Garno said that. That's great." And then I'm talked to my wife, who was a teacher for 20 years in Churchville. She said, "You realize he said that to every class?" I said, no way. And then I asked some friends of mine.
Yeah.
They go, yeah, we were the number one. Mr. Garno said we were. I was like, oh my God. Oh, blew my way. But he was still a great, great person. And going in home, one thing fortunate to have my older brother was I saw the college process, and he was 3 years older. So I knew that you had to get involved, that they didn't just look at your academics. And that helped me for West Point because I got involved in everything. So I was on the yearbook, like you mentioned. I was on student council. I was the president of the German club.
Mm-hmm.
I was in junior Rotarians. I was DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution, Citizen of Hilton. I got involved in a lot of stuff.
National Honor Society,
National
too.
Honor Society. Yeah, that was a good one. And it was a heady time because, let's face it, now in life, I didn't have to pay bills. I didn't have to where my food was. I knew where my house was. I borrowed my parents' car, so I worked maybe in the summertime, but life was good, and I think at an early age, I realized that life was pretty good in high school. And I got very close with a teacher, German teacher, Mrs. Sue Fuller,
Mm-hmm.
who was a phenomenal. She was the yearbook, head of the yearbook. And I was fortunate enough to have her in my life. She helped me a lot with academics and with guidance on just life issues and stuff like that. So I know a lot of people have close teachers, and that's one. And she was one of them,
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to recognize her for that. She's still alive. She lives in Washington State. She moved with her husband and moved there and had a son. And I hear from her periodically, and it just touches my heart because I don't think she knows how much.
Right.
I went to visit West Point. She came with my family and was there and supported me in any of my big things. So teachers like that, and I have other teachers that were very important to me, but she was one of them. So growing up to Hilton, that's a big kind of cusp of how my life was. There were a lot of action, a lot of moving groups, a lot of things to do. Never bored. If I was bored, my mom would look at me. Why are you bored? Something's wrong with you. And my dad, he could just move his glasses and look at you, and he felt like an idiot. So you didn't want to get the glasses lowered and stuff like that. So we were very close as a family. And we were very successful, all in our own ways. We were each successful, and I put that as a testament to my parents and what they did, and Hilton as a community. I think that a village does help where you grow up and how you feel, how safe you feel, the people, the like backgrounds. I joke with my wife now. She's saying she's from Churchville, so she grew up in Churchville. A funny story, you talk about Hilton. So in eighth grade, I was notified you're going to take freshman chemistry. They were accelerating, so I went to from eighth grade. I took science 231. Her mother was my instructor, and I guess she liked me. I guess I got teacher's pet of the year in the yearbook for a reason. I mean, I didn't break rule. I tried not to break rules. So she said, I think I got a daughter that you might want to meet. And I was like looking at her and go, I don't know. I said, okay, Mrs. Wilson, sure. So dragged my poor wife to one of my wrestling matches when I was like 14.
The mom did?
The mom did.
Okay.
And, we both had our own separate lives, and we found each other and we got married. But it's a strange story where you talk about people having that little spark of Hilton and, met my future wife there,
Right.
from another town. But Hilton was like that. It was a great, great small community to grow up in.
What did your parents do for occupations?
My dad was, as I said before, he was a tool and die maker. So you
Okay.
had to have a skill. So
All right.
he
Okay.
came,
All right,
came and he was working for nylon mold, and his desire. So one of the cool things about my dad was he always said that you don't want to work for somebody. You don't want to make somebody else wealthy. He says you want to work on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And in America, I firmly believe this, that we're the best country in the world for that. Where he grew up, he explained to me in Germany that they picked you early, and they kind of said, and I know that because I was stationed there. I lived in Germany for 6 years. They kind of, in the school system, they select whether you're a university kid or if you're going to be a blue collar worker, technical skills and stuff, which isn't a bad system. I mean, it actually produces the best craftsmen in the world and stuff. And he got that. He was a journeyman and has a license. So he always said that you want to work for yourself. So he started his own company after working many, many years at I Am Mold, and he started in Hilton. And, one thing my parents always said was, you're all going to college, because we made the sacrifice. Come over here, you're not just going to not do anything. So we all knew, I kind of knew at an early age I was going to college. I just didn't know how I was paying for it. So my older brother went on a full ride to North Carolina. I was next up in line, and I went to West Point. So that was fully funded. That was good. But I told you that little thing where you all went to my parents and they'd do that, grade check. Well, the same thing with college was, they would ask you like, okay, what's your plan? Where are you going to, how are you doing college? And we're all like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. I'm going to. And they asked my brother, you call him Harold, I call him Charlie. And they came to Charlie and they asked him, and he goes, I'm not going to college. We're all like, you ever see that cereal commercial with Mikey?
Yeah.
Where you're like the life cereal, and you're like, oh my God, he's going to get it. This is going to be very bad.
Right.
And they said, well, what are you going to do? And he says, I'm going to be your apprentice, Dad. And because of that decision, my dad died very early at 55, massive heart attack.
Really?
And and he started business. And if my brother hadn't made that decision, then we would have been really in tough times, because that company was supporting my mother, and because he decided not to go to college and learn how to be a tool and die maker, he took over it, and he's still running the business. Wow. So I mean, incredible little stories there, and it just shows you, how fate goes, and it was amazing. So I don't remember the original question, but
no, you answered it, and I think my father passed away at 55. What was it like on the family losing a father?
Horrible.
Yeah. How did you get through it? Did you look towards each other? Faith? I mean, like. Because you couldn't have been very old.
I think it was very hard. I was 27, so I was. It devastated the family. I mean, he was the ballast, I think, and it was hard. It was hard on my my young brother. I know that he had a big thing that he had to do. I was in the Army. Probably shifted my momentum, because at the time, I was honestly thinking about, okay, I've done my 5 years. I'm getting close to my 5 years. I'm going to get out. And the plan was I was going to come back home to Hilton, and I was going to work with my dad, and we are going to try to grow the business, and that all changed, because at the time I just told my dad the night before that I was getting engaged, and then he passed away. Had a very long conversation with that night. Very weird why that happened. I'm a firm believer in interventions and God. And I talked to him for a long time, because I was chastising him a little bit and saying, why are you still at work? It's a Friday night. I was going on a date that night, and I said, why? I shouldn't be calling you and you're at work. And he was explaining, and we just had a very wonderful conversation. And that's when I told him. And then I got the phone call the next day. He said, Dad passed away. It used to be Park Ridge. Now it's Unity. And I said, that's impossible. I was just talking to him. I collapsed. It was a big hole to fill. And I remember when I came back, had to be a little stoic, because I had to go with my younger brother, because we had a lot of orders that were in the company, because Xerox is big, Kodak, and a couple of firms that were contracted with them. They'd subcontract to my dad's business, and we had to reinsure them that we could fill those orders, because if we didn't get those orders, the business. So, something unexpected like that just changes your entire life. And I think of my dad every day. I don't think I've ever really recovered from him doing, that happening to him,
Is your mom still alive?
No, my mom passed away. She passed away at 2013.
Okay.
And I don't think, if it wasn't for all my brothers and sisters, there was only two of us really that left Hilton. My sister Monica and I. She had her family there, and they had the grandkids. My brother Dave and my brother Charlie had kids. So she kind of, I think, got comfort. At least that gave me comfort, thinking that she had the family and people taking care of her. So, so that happened, and sad when she passed away. But I think they're in a better place. That's what I believe.
Yeah, totally. And you had that conversation on that night for a reason. And
Yeah.
where were you stationed at that point?
Fort Carson.
Okay,
I was at the 4th Infantry
and that's
Division,
Colorado.
Colorado.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people get taken much too young, whether it's 55 or
Well,
95.
a good thing, if there are good things about that, was was always aware of my own health, my
Mm-hmm.
own cardio health and stuff. And when I turned 50, I noticed when I was walking our dogs that I would get this pain on my left arm. Now, normally, you know, you you know, you're a soldier, you're a wrestler,
Mm-hmm.
work through it, run an extra couple of miles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I postponed it a little bit, was on a corporate jet coming back when I was working for Oshkosh Defense. And I said, I should go, I should call my doctor. I was in Maryland, and I called the nurse. And I said, I'm getting little pains. I want to come in, just get an AKG, just, check it out. And she just read me the riot act, said, you should be in a hospital right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna be left here in Maryland. I'm gonna get back on the jet and come back with the group. So I came back, and then all of a sudden, blah, 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 they put the big lights on in the emergency room. It turned out I had a 90% blockage on my LAD. So like Tim Russert, it was
Mm-hmm.
the same type of deal. And I was on borrowed time. So I got the stent. I get checked every year, and everything's going good. So who knows? If my
Mm-hmm.
dad didn't, I wouldn't have been aware. So it made me much more aware of my health and watching for things and not ignoring things that I normally would have just said, nah, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pretty big deal.
Huge deal. Now, how did you end up picking West Point? Like, you're graduating high school, was it some real obvious that you wanted to go there, or what directed
Well,
you to go there, you think?
good question. So I always knew about West Point because I was a big Civil War, World War II buff. And I would, like in third or fourth grade, I used to go to the library, check out all the like Doolittle's Raiders over Tokyo and the Western Front and Civil War, Confederates and Union, and they were all kept going back to West Point, West Point. They're all West Point graduates. So I looked at it, I tried to figure out what West Point was, but I wasn't like thinking anything other than it was an interest to me. And then along came a person named Bob Stevens, who was a very
Mm-hmm.
close friend. So I talk about people influence your life. Sue Fuller, Bob Stevens,
Mm-hmm.
big family friend. Him and his wife Carol, who is another person that left the world way too young. My first experience with anybody dying was Carol Stevens, and what a gracious lady and how she approached it. But Bob Stevens' father was a West Point instructor. He was head of the English department, retired as a brigadier general. So when you run a department at West Point, when you retire, they make you a brigadier general.
Okay.
So he grew up, and he was an Army major in the military intelligence. And he would tell me stories like when he was in Berlin, and he was in West Berlin monitoring East Berlin and the Germans, East Germans and the Soviets and everything. And I was literally fascinated on listening to him. So that kind of reinforced it, but I still hadn't been sold on it. And then I had the opportunity my junior year in wrestling. I was selected for an AAW or AAU team that went to Iran, of all places. And there was me and a bunch of Rochester people, all from that Carter Street gym that I told you about, Coach Frank Oliveris. In fact, I got inducted. I was very honored to be inducted in the Section 5 Wrestling Hall of Fame. He was a guy that nominated. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why all of a sudden after all these years, I wouldn't. And he nominated, and that was part of the reason. The training camp was at West Point, so there's a West Point connection. So we spent like 3 or 4 days at West Point, and back then, I was mentally challenged because I thought, what a beautiful place. All these guys are doing PT. I'd wake up in the morning, they're running and they're lifting and they're doing it. I'm like, wow, this is a cool place. And I knew my history, and I'm just looking, I'm seeing Eisenhower, and I'm seeing Patton statues and all this stuff. And I thought, this is great. And we were wrestling in the wrestling rooms and everything. And the coach got to know me a little bit, and we went back. So the plan was, I was going to try to follow my older brother's footsteps, try to get the states and win the states and do that and get the full ride and everything else. Well, God said that ain't happening, So I lost in the qualifiers to a kid. Ended up going to states and doing well. Did fourth. He's in the section hall of fame, and so I was getting these half scholarships and everything. But I applied to West Point because I said, I like West Point. Let's see if I get accepted. I was really kind of goofy. I went to Barbara Conable. He nominated me. He had a certain amount of nominations he could do. And I got accepted. And I remember getting the thing, I got accepted and everything. So when I lost in March or something, I said, okay, I'm getting these half scholarships if you make the team. And I saw through my brother that it was more ruthless than you think in the college scene. Now it's horrible with the NIL and everything else they're doing. It even infects wrestling. But he would always come back and say, yeah, Coach Lamb, great coach, great guy. But he would always say, there's some boy in Iowa that's waiting for your scholarship, if you don't win. And I don't like that. I don't like being put in that I have to win in order to earn my meals. I wasn't that type of person. So I was like, this is a little hard. So I said, okay, I'm going to West Point. If I don't like it, I can always do it. But in reality, once I start something, I don't usually quit. So I went in and I accepted, and I went to our day, and I said, okay, this is not what I thought. It's a really beautiful place, but this is really bad.
Yeah.
bad, boop, boop, boop. And it was kind of eerie. So when you get your uniforms and everything, you get your field jacket. I knew there was a guy named Rick Eney that graduated from Hilton. And I don't know if he was the first West Point. He could have been, might have been people in the 50s, 60s. I don't know. But I knew he was saying his sister, Sandy Eney, was in my class. So I knew him. But when he graduated in 78, I had just come in the summer of 78. So when he was leaving, throwing his hat up, yeah, I'm out of here, I was just coming in. But my field jacket, so they would give you the field jacket and they'd be used, because you don't take a field jacket with. His name was on it. So you think out of 4,000 possibilities,
The
guy from Hilton gives his field jacket to the guy from Hilton. So I knew, I was like, okay, this is a little spooky, but this is meant to be. So once you get past your first year,
Tell me a little about that plebe year.
Oh, it was,
because I was reading a little bit about the Thayer method of learning, problem solving, character development.
Oh God, yeah. You're bringing back the ghosts.
Yeah,
I was one of these guys that when I was driving off, I looked at it and said, "I'll never see you again." And now when you get older, you forget all that stuff, and you have nostalgia for it. I was our class president, the last reunion. I was voted as class president for our class, so I had to go through the reunion stuff. So it was bringing back all those emotions, everything I thought I had forgotten and stuff. And it was all not bad memory. It was a lot of good memory, but a lot of challenges. Sure. So you remember your plebe year. Okay. I don't want to take up all your time. I got some funny stories from there.
Made for.
Okay, so I was talking about Bob Stevens. So, of course, Bob Stevens, he helped. Oh, I think I said this, but he helped write my essay. So I wrote my essays, and then he proofed them and put them into English and helped me in any way you could think of. And real mentor, never a tormentor. I always do well with mentors. If you're a tormentor, I don't do so well with you. Mentors, I do very well, and I try to be that. So Bob's niece was at West Point, the first class of female graduates, class 80. So I am looking for this person because I figured, this is, some relief, last name was Perkins. I'm getting the brain fart. But, I used to, the Stevens kids, I used to babysit them. I'm very close to most of them. And, they're close with her, Jane Perkins. And so I'm looking for her and our day and everything. And then who do I report to? Her. I didn't know that. So it's a famous thing where you report to the person in the red sash and they tell you your 4 responses are yes, sir, no, sir, no excuse, sir, sir, I do not understand. The problem with that is she's not a sir. And nobody told me what you call a female. So I'm like looking at her. I'm going, sir. She goes, do I look like a sir to you? And I don't think she recognized that I was the guy that she was looking for. I knew her, but I wasn't going to say anything because there's a whole line and everybody's hazing and you're yelling and screaming at you and you're getting a lot of this input that you don't want. And I'm like, madame? She goes, do I look like a madame? I'm like, I don't know. And then she just said, get out of my sight. And I learned that you call ma'am,
Okay.
not madam, not miss. I was called miss,
Mm-hmm.
Mrs.,
Mm-hmm.
anything I could think of. So later on, she came like about a week later. She says, oh my God, my Uncle Bob, you were the guy. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm like, no, it's okay. And you can't fraternize. I mean, it was a big prohibition. So she was very kind, very thing, but I never wanted to get her in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to get in trouble, especially being the first women
Female class.
Yeah, female class. And she was, when I was there, I entered in 78. So she was a junior, so she didn't want to get in trouble because she had another year. But just a good connection to Hilton and Bob Stevens, was Jane Perkins. So that was our day. And then, Beast Barracks is the first like month and a half, 2 months. That's just crazy. And then you get into academics, and that's sort of like a pressure relief valve because now the upperclassmen, they're too involved in their academics. They don't have enough time to play with you. Summer was, you were their sole focus. So it was a little bit easier. The thing that I remember, was a big thing was at that time you couldn't leave the perimeter of West Point. So you could not walk 1 foot out. So we were in there. You were allowed radios, but you could only play them during certain times. You couldn't drink any alcohol unless it was a home football game and only from this time. Everything was regimented and it drive you crazy. You couldn't get off post. So I remember I went out, I was recruited for the wrestling team. So I made the team my freshman year and we had to wrestle against Cornell. And I got on the team bus. And I remember the feeling to this day of looking out the window like I was in Folsom Prison or something. I was like, I'm out.
Right.
I'm out.
Right.
I can look around.
Right.
Holy crap. Look at this.
Right.
And that was a big deal. So the wrestling team was another pressure relief valve. I was able to go off post and wrestle and do things with the team. And then you could eat at core squad tables, which was a big deal. So, how you used to have to eat like this and thing, and you have to cut a pea. I mean, back then it was crazy. I remember in Beast Barracks, I would try to take the jams, the little packets of jams, and put them in my thing because that's the only thing I could eat. They've changed all that now to the better, I think. But back then it was crazy. So you go to core squad, you didn't have to do that because you were with your team. So I didn't have to eat like that. So I thought it was great. I loved being on core squad wrestling. And the tougher part, so if you looked at your sophomore year, so the first year they try to weed you out with just pressure and stuff. Academics are tough. You have to take, when I went there, you didn't have a choice of majors. You had area concentration, but everybody was going to be an engineer. It was an engineer school. So you had to take calculus, you had to take physics, chemistry, crazy classes. Like, later on my sophomore and junior, electrical engineering, thermodynamics, solids. I don't like that stuff. I was in the law and business. I took area concentration and did very well in those areas. But my sophomore year, this is where I get to the Thayer learning method. So it wasn't a big deal. And then I took sophomore year, they really focus on the academics. They say that's the hardest year because they want to see if you're going to make it. Because once you make it, you have an obligation. First day you step in your junior year, you're obligated to the Army. So if you quit or get thrown out or anything, then you have an obligation to serve in the military. So they want to clear you out before then and know. So we had to take this thing called boards, which is insane. So you have to do your homework. You come into class, and then they have all these chalkboards all along around the room, and you have to. If they say take boards, you have to go to your board, and they have the thing. Cadet will not tolerate. You cannot lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. So big thing. Class of '77 was a big cheating scandal. So when I went there in '78, we were inundated with honor classes. You will not lie. You won't cheat. You see something wrong, you're going to report it. You had to mark your location on this board in your room where you were. You were in the library, you were in the mess hall, you were at the gym, you were studying, you were something. So it was all very. So the boards were like that. So you had to go. Say, okay, take boards. So you're on your board. You can't dare look to your partner over here or your classmate over here because that'd be cheating. So you're doing your problem. And I had this guy who turned out to be my best friend in this world, my lifelong mentor, Bill Thomas, and he was my chemistry professor. And he said, take boards. And what he would do, you take the boards, and if you goofed up the problem, he knew you goofed up. So what would happen is you'd sit down in your seat, and they say, okay, Cadet Juergens, explain your solution. So you had to get to the board, and there was a whole military thing like, sir, the problem was this, and you have to state the problem. My methods were here, step 1, step 2, step 3. My conclusion is this, and it's supported by this. And that. But I had goofed up the whole problem, so he knew.
Right.
I was just stumbling all over my place doing it. But it reinforced you in learning that you had to do your homework. You had to know what you're talking about. And it reinforced because you saw your other classmates give the solution, and it had a mythology to it. So this is back like in 1800s, and we're doing this in 1979 or 1980. So that was a very rigorous academic program, and like I said, you had to take classes. Necessarily, if I had chosen a regular college, I wouldn't have had to have taken thermodynamics, or electrical engineering. The only thing I remember is the right-hand rule, the current. You put it there, and that's where the current's flowing. So that's the only thing I remember. Maybe it'll save my life someday. Right. I don't know, Mike. Maybe I have to do something. But that was the thing. But going back to Bill Thomas, so telling you about leadership and how important it is. I came back from spring break. I went to Bermuda, and he was 6'4". He was a star basketball player. He was recruited for the NBA. Decided to stay in the Army, and he was an ordnance officer, and that's what I happened to be. I went into the Ordnance Corps after graduation, which is maintenance, logistics maintenance for the Army, which helped me throughout my whole life. But he explained it to me because West Point was focused on infantry, armor, tanks. I was thinking I was going to be an armor officer because I like tanks. I like firing tanks. And so I came back from this spring break, and he's this fierce, tough-looking dude, very straight, very hard. Taught me an important lesson that I'll share, but I've used it all my life. But he asked me when I was leaving him, he said, hey, Juergens, did you have fun? Did you get lucky in Bermuda? I'm like, what the hell did you just ask me?
Right.
And I'm looking at him. And somehow I was invited back to his home. And you know how you hit it off with somebody who turns out to be your best friend? He was a major. And he became my mentor. He's the guy that told me everything about the Army. If I ever had a question, if I ever asked how to do it, or why is this going this way, or what should I pick? Big momentous occasions. My father was gone, so he kind of was like a father figure to me too. And he just passed away a year and a half ago. So it was very sad. I was there when he died. But he was the guy that taught me the Sylvanus Thayer method thing. Turned out to be the guy got me into the Ordnance Corps, and was a lifelong friend. And I got that out of West Point. So it was a good deal.
So you you got a BS in engineering and business management? Right?
Yep.
Tell me about the Recondo patch. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, the Recondo patch. So in after your freshman year, your plebe year, you go to Camp Buckner, which is your yearling year. Your sophomore year is called the yearling year. There you go and you get introduced to every branch. So every branch has a week where they do things. And then during that training, you have the condo patch, which is a big thing. They have it at universities and ROTC programs as well as West Point. And you go in the field for 2 weeks. You get a infantry division. I think we had the 82nd Airborne from Fort Bragg come down, and they mentor you. And you learn small group tactics at the infantry level on squad and platoon size. And you go through this rigorous. You don't sleep. You patrol all night. You you eat the sea rations. You know, you don't. You sleep out in the woods with just your blanket. You lead people. You get chosen. So one time they'll say, "Juergens, you're the platoon leader," and then you get graded. So, you know, I remember one time we had an ambush planned, and it was, you know, this is like the seventh, eighth day of training, and everybody was sleeping, and you'd fail the patrol. So you're getting ready on your patrol, and you'd fail if any of you guys were sleeping and stuff, and you had the machine guns, and you're waiting for these guys. Well, and I remember everybody's going kind of like this, and then I saw this hazy group of people walking. I said, "Wait a second, what is that?" And I hit the guy next to me. I said, is that what I think it is? And they go, "Yeah." And then all of a sudden, everybody go, bah, 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 bah. So we got it. So I passed. So you go through a bunch of obstacles. You take that slide for life, you know, where you go into Lake Frederick and you slide down the wire and everything. So if you survive that and you pass all the scores, then you get the thing called a Recondo patch. So it's kind of like a Ranger tab, but it's very, I mean, you're only doing 2 weeks. You're not doing it for months on the time. But yeah, it was a nice thing to do. A lot of people didn't get it. A lot of it's hard. I think things that benefited me was just being in athletics, being a wrestler, you know, and everything I learned from there just toughened you up to keep your wits about you.
I noticed that you're wearing a Army wrestling shirt too.
Yep. No. I was very fortunate. I wrestled for West Point. It was a Division I program. Wrestled them for 4 years. Was a 3-year varsity letter winner. I take great pride in that. Got my name on a little bronze plaque there with my class, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, wrestling is a way of life. I take it as part of my philosophy. I still follow NCAA wrestling, follow Division One, I follow Olympics and World Team Trial. It's like, you know, it's like watching baseball or when people watch basketball. I watch wrestling, and very proud. I had some great coaches. I had Coach Pfeiffer was my freshman year, and then I had a guy named Ed Steers that was my coach. He was a Citadel grad. So he was from another academy and very successful wrestler for their program. And he was a great coach. And we broke a lot of records again. You know, when I was in there, we were very fortunate to have great wrestlers on my team. And we did very well. We did very well as a team. I think we were ranked 23rd at the country at that time. And there was a lot more wrestling programs back then. So it was a pretty good accomplishment. And it gave me lifelong friends. Like one of my best friends is Chris Johnson from White Plains. You know, talk to him every other week. You know, so
Did you go to the Army Navy games when you were at West
no,
Point? No.
So yeah, that'd be a good trivia question if they'd ask you, how many West Point graduates did not attend an Army Navy game during their entire tenure? I'm one of them.
Okay.
Because for some reason, wrestling always had our opening match on the same weekend that they had Army Navy. So I had to be a second lieutenant and stationed at Aberdeen Proving Grounds before I got to see Army Navy game. It was really strange.
So you graduate from West Point. Do they tell you where to go, or do you have a choice?
No. They encourage you. They like you to go to combat arms, but what happens is based on your class rank and stuff, you get choices. So if you're high enough in the class, then you get to pick what branch you want. So a lot of guys picked infantry. A lot of people picked engineers. That was a popular one my year. Armor was a popular one. I picked ordnance, and Bill Thomas did such a good job that I think, had the highest ordnance selection from West Point cadets from West Point. And so, you know, if you were very low in the class, then unfortunately they selected for you, to answer your question. So you could be told what you're doing, but if you did enough academically, then as long as there were slots there. So there was plenty of infantry armor. So it was I call them niche branches, MI, um, air defense artillery, maybe, I don't know, ordnance,
What
quartermaster,
is ordnance?
transportation.
Explain to me what that is.
So ordnance is, when I first heard it, I thought it was bombs, because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, ordnance is bombs. And then Colonel Thomas explained to me that it's logistics management. So it's, you think if you're going to a repair shop, it's like a repair shop, but you do it in the field, and it morphs. At first, when you're a lieutenant, you're running a shop office, which I did in Kaiserslautern in Germany, my first store, and you're responsible to fix tanks, trucks, uh, air defense, artillery, missiles, anything that needs repair and maintenance. So there's cyclic maintenance, preventive maintenance checks. There's a whole mess of things that involve, but it's a more managerial type leadership managerial thing. So you got inputs, you got work that you do, you lead soldiers that are mechanics and things like that, and then you spit out a product, and
Okay.
you're graded on how well you do that process. If you do it well, then you get company command, you get a maintenance company like I did at Fort Carson, and then after that you go into a field grade, and then that's when you do all logistics. So they talk about the logistics tail, tooth to tail. The tooth is much smaller than the tail. The tail is huge to support an army. So you deal with transportation, get people there, equipment there. You deal with quartermaster, which is clothing, food, fuel, and then you do maintenance, which is repair parts, maintenance, repair, forward. The concepts keep changing. It used to be repair forward. You'd go forward as far as where the infantry thing, where the vehicles broke down, and you'd fix them forward. Sometimes you take them back to the rear, try to replace them there. You'd replace parts sometimes and not even try to repair them, or you would repair them in place with parts that you had. And you might cannibalize, which is a bad word, but you take parts from another vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a whole system, and it's very storied. It's one of the oldest branches in the U.S. Army, and that's why I decided I was going to be an armor officer. Then I met Bill Thomas, and I went ordnance, and I did well. I got selected to be in the Ordnance Hall of Fame for the U.S. Army.
Wow.
So as a colonel, so I got nominated, and I was selected. I was very fortunate. My first assignment, I was selected as aide de camp to a one-star general, General Lee Solomon, who ended up retiring as a four-star. Was another big mentor. I've been very fortunate with people in my life that impact me, and he nominated me for the Ordnance Hall of Fame, and I got in. So that was very nice, very humbling.
I also read something about you graduating from the U.S. Naval War College in 2002.
Yep.
In the top 10%. How does that weave into what you were doing at the time? And
Well, it's part of your professional education. So when you go to your basic course, you go to your advanced course, you learn about what your branch does, what you're supposed to do at that level. And then you have a command general staff college, which Eisenhower was very famous in, at Fort Leavenworth. And that's where you meet with all your brother and sister officers from different branches, different fields, different divisions, corps, and you all learn how to be a staff officer. So you learn how to support the commander. So, anything that you have to do, staff work, intel estimates, personnel estimates, log estimates, tactical, strategic, small unit, battalion, brigade size, corps size, tactical level, you all learn it at the same time. So that's part of your education. Then after your brigade command, then you go into what they call your post-grad education, where you get a master's out of attending. So you have a couple of them. You have the U.S. Army War College at Carlisle. You have the U.S. Navy War College at Newport, Rhode Island. You have the National War College in D.C. You have the Air Force College down in Alabama. And I was fortunate that it's a selection, so you have to get selected. And I was fortunate after my battalion command to be selected to attend the War College. So that's the next step. So to go from lieutenant colonel to colonel, back then you had to just basically be selected for the War College. If you didn't go to the War College, it would be very difficult to get promoted. and I had a decision whether I could go to the Army or the Navy. I thought it'd be interesting to attend the Navy, big rivals,
Hmm.
and see what they were. Newport was a nice location. The wife at the time, she wanted to go there, and I thought it was a great place to go. So I went, and I loved it. Big supporter of the Navy in that regard. It was a great family time, great educational. Got to meet people from all services. Got to be very friendly with Marine Corps people. A lot of friends I still have to this day from the Marine Corps and Navy guys. Some Marine people. They're fascinating. It's an opportunity to mix and mingle at a senior level
Hmm.
with very successful people in their branches and their services, and then to learn. We had guest speakers. I mean, we had cabinet members come and talk to us, and just distinguished visitors and stuff. It was very cool.
Tell me about how you had time to meet your first wife and have a child.
Uh, it just, I mean, what do you, it just,
Did you get married while you were at West Point?
no,
Okay.
no, no,
Did
no,
she and she followed you around and stuff?
no. We met in the airport. She was working for a travel agency,
Okay.
and I met her there. And then we just dated, and like I said, talked to my father the night before I proposed, and then we proposed. We got married at West Point,
Uh-huh.
and then we had Thayer. So we had Thayer when I was at grad school. So we asked him one time. Yeah, I was at grad school, so I got selected after company command to go to a fully funded graduate school. So I wanted to get my MBA. That was another one of the decisions when my father died, and I was hitting the 4 or 5 year mark, and I could leave the Army. Well, the Army always gives you carrots. So if you're doing well,
Right.
they don't want you to leave. So they say, "Hey, Ken, what do you want to do next? How would you like graduate school?" Okay.
All right.
Can I go for an MBA? Yeah. I said, okay. And they said, we're going to send you to Babson College outside of Boston. Do you want to go there? I was like, yeah. So I went there, and that's when I had time to have a child.
Gotcha. You also, I think, at Babson, you graduated in the top 5%. Um, Tell me, there was some business case analysis paper that you submitted to Stanford, was it?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I did my research.
Yeah.
And your team, I think you won some
Yeah. We
prestigious
won
award
we won
from.
a science award for it. Our professor for, distribution analysis. It was actually on, this berry farm that we were doing that we had to figure out the best way of picking it, getting it through the processes, and then delivering a product. And you had to write, it had all the equations and calculus. And I mean, it was a big deal. It was a lot of work. It was a big deal. We had to figure out it was cranberries, and because it was in New England, so you had to figure out the cranberry thing, and we won. I was like shocked. So we got the thing, and the professor wrote a very nice note. Glad you submitted this. Thanks for participating. It was extra credit. Da da da. So it was good. It was a nice. That was I forgot about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a nice thing.
I thought I also remembered something about you did some work with the Abrams tank. Is that true?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was that
So
about?
after graduate school, they asked me where I wanted to go, and ordnance. My title was tank automotive officer, and for maintenance officer, and the tank automotive command was in Warren, Michigan, and I wanted to get into contracting, so that was a contracting command for all the fighting vehicle systems. So Abrams was one of that. The tanks was one of that. So I worked very closely. I worked for a GS-15, which is like the highest civilian until you get to be senior executive service, which is like a general. But I worked for a GS-15, one level below, like a colonel, and got great experiences. And then I was selected to be the PEO, the program executive officer's uh, operations officer or chief of staff, kind of like an aide to a two-star general. And that was pretty heady because I got to see all the systems. So I saw the Bradley fighting vehicle, the AFAS, which was the artillery system at the time, Abrams tank, all of those things. And I remember you talk about history. So you remember the Waco that storming of Waco,
Waco,
the
Texas, with
yeah, with
David Koresh.
David Koresh and
Yeah.
all that. So when that was coming on, we managed all the vehicles. So I took the phone call from the FBI on what would happen if we take a Bradley fighting vehicle and crashed it in the building and did all this stuff. And I said, well, it's beyond my paycheck. I'll give you the 2-star. And then
Mhm.
and we were doing that whole thing. And then I was shocked on TV watching. I
When
said,
you
they
saw
really
it.
did this. I thought it was crazy, but I
Mhm.
said, yeah, they used the Bradley fighting vehicle
Mhm.
against these people. And it was kind of weird. It was a weird thing to be involved with at that time.
You before we went on camera, you talked about being on CNN that one time.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Okay. Um, so after I retired from the army, I was in Stuttgart, Germany, and it's very difficult trying to find a job. And from there, because I'd never done it before, I never went job hunting because I was in the military. It's sort of
Mhm.
like you were as a teacher, you didn't have to go find
No.
jobs and try to stuff. So I knew I still wanted to work. I just didn't want to retire. So I had a good friend of mine that I worked at Tank Automotive Command with, and he was a president of this company called Oshkosh Defense, and he knew who I was, and he said, Ken, I can't promise you, that I went there for an interview, and they came, this is not like the military, this is the civilian world, so I can't promise you it's going to work out or nothing, but I'm going to give you an opportunity, and if you're successful, and if you win contracts and you do stuff, then you'll have a job. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, yeah, put me in, coach. Let me try. So I did it, and they put me on for joint vehicle systems, which means joint means it could be any service: Navy, Air Force, Marine, Army, and we provide vehicles to those services. So there was a big program called the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle. It's in the Army now, but back then in what was this 2007 2008, it was just starting. They were putting bids out for contracts, so we tried to go for it, and I thought we had a very innovative approach. We had a hybrid electric vehicle, which now they're common, but back then nobody heard of it, and they were like, "You're crazy," and I was like telling them to the Army and to the Joint Services, I would tell them, I said, this, right now it costs like $400 a gallon to put fuel in a desert environment. Like if you're in Afghanistan,
Mhm.
there's not gas stations. So to deliver that fuel, get it there, uh, costs a lot of money. If you get a hybrid electric, you save this much gas. So I thought I had the perfect solution. Well, it was too out there for the Army. They said, "Oh, somebody will get electrocuted if they open up the vehicle," and I'm like, "No, that's insane. That won't happen," And we lost. So talk about the pucker figure, because I got hired to try to win that contract. So this is all new to me, right? So this is not like it's stable. You got a job. Don't
Right.
worry about it. Go on to the next one. It's like, no, this is bad. So there was a program called the MRAP, which was a mine resistant ambush protected vehicle. And if you remember in Iraq at the time, they were using improvised explosive devices, IEDs,
Mhm.
to kill our soldiers. They put them on, and for very inexpensive, they'd take a tank shell or artillery shell, put a timer on it or a tripwire, and they'd blow it up, and it blow up the vehicle. I lost a classmate, a West Point class of mine, who I was friends with, and his sergeant major was my first sergeant. He died from an IED, so it was very bad. And we got into Afghanistan, and the ones in Iraq were like 45,000, 60,000 pounds because the roads could support it.
Mhm.
And we bid for that contract. We lost that contract. That was before my time. And when Afghanistan came, they realized that those vehicles were way too heavy for the roads. It would collapse. You had to go in the mountains and stuff, and these things. So they said, you got a weight limit. So being a wrestler, my ears are tuned up.
Right.
Weight limit. Okay. 25,000 pounds. Can't be any heavier than 25,000 pounds, but it has to give you the same protection as if it was a 70,000 pound vehicle. I'm like, what the? We had great engineers. So our capsule that we devised for that JLT effort, that worked. That was a light system that it literally would die in its place. So you would be in the vehicle and you'd hit an IED and it would explode and everything would go away. Like, you ever see those like old Saab or
Mm-hmm.
Volvo where they said you crash?
Yep.
And, you know, it was the same concept. And if you looked at the vehicle after, you say everybody died. Oh my God, this is horrible. And everybody walked away without a scratch.
Mm-hmm.
So it was incredible. So I looked at it, and then I knew that we made their 5-ton cargos and called the FMTV vehicles. The chassis on there was a different chassis than we were using for the JLTV. So I had a friend of mine who was an engineer on the thing, and I give him as much credit. We're there just BSing in my office. I'm like, well, could we meet this requirement? You know, how do we do? And I said, what about the JLTV? Can we put the JLT capsule onto the frame of this other one, and would it work? And we started doing the calculation. I said, yeah. So long story short, we came out of left field. Nobody thought Oshkosh was even in the thing. We won. We won the contract. $6 million contract. Biggest contract that Oshkosh had ever won. And the big line was we saved a lot of lives.
Mm-hmm.
So when we won that contract, reports started going in the field about how successful this vehicle was working, how everybody was stunned. In fact, if you look at, we later won the JLTV contract after I left the company, but based on the same design as the MATV. So you're asking about interviews. So I started getting tasked with interviews, you know, and it was like CNN. Hello, this is CNN, Barbara Starr. I'd like to interview Ken Juergens. You know, he's the program, you know, vice president of this thing. And so I had to take her around the course and watch her and laugh as she was going up and down. And then we had that. And then we had ABC News, and then a whole mess of, you know, not getting. We had a bunch of news because it was a newsworthy event. So New York Times,
Sure.
Wall Street Journal was interviewing us and the team, and it was very nice. But I told you off camera, probably the biggest thing that I'll always remember and still to this day, and I'm very blessed that I was part of this, was I got a phone call once, and the operator, the company operator, said, Mr. Juergens, you got to end the phone call. I was like, yeah, okay. You know, who is it? And he said, oh, they'll tell you. So I said, okay. So I picked up the phone and said, hi, you don't know me. I'm Jack, and I'm from Georgia. And I just want to say that my son was deployed to Afghanistan, and he's home now celebrating the birth of his son, and they're getting married today. And he started breaking down crying. And I was like, oh, you're not good. And he goes, yeah, he was in your vehicle, and he's here today. And he said, I saw pictures of that vehicle. There's nothing left of that vehicle. And he said, you know, God, and, you know, I still almost get choked up thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it was, that's one of the things in life that you just say, you know, thank God I was there. Thank God we had the technology. And it wasn't me, of course. We had so many engineers, so many people doing that. And we came up with a solution that was the right thing at the right place, the right time. And subsequently, because of that, you know, byproducts are, yeah, the news interviewed me, you know, so I was on the papers.
I noticed you did work some other places, DynCorp International, where you had customers in 20 countries.
Yeah.
2,800 employees.
Got to go to the Middle East a lot on that one. UAE and Dubai.
Wow.
Fly from Atlanta to there is 14 hours. And then I saw my first sandstorm. You know, I asked him, what is that thing in the thing? Oh, Mr. Juergens, that's a sandstorm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you'll see. Yeah, I saw. It's horrible. But, I mean, beautiful country, innovative and everything. But, yeah, DynCorp, I left Oshkosh Defense for that. I was recruited for that job. And I had the global regional programs and the business, national government, U.S. products division stuff. So we did a lot of logistics support and all that. And I had that LUD, that base that I ran through the things.
Mm-hmm.
I was in charge of that logistically with that company. So I was like all ears. I was like, oh, they fired 14 missiles. Okay, yeah, I know. We had Patriot batteries. They took care of it, but I wouldn't invite them again, Mr. President. Don't tell them it's okay.
Yeah.
Don't suggest that, but okay, you know better than I do, I guess. But yeah, that was an interesting job. And then after that, I went to Colt Firearms, and there's always a tag. You see, I know it's a defense industry, but it's always supporting the soldier. So I'm always looking at stuff like that. MATV supported the soldier. You know, when I was at DynCorp, all I was doing was support the soldiers with food, clothing, housing, you know, all that kind of sport fuel, all that stuff. And then for Colt was obviously I grew up with the M16 when I was in the Army, and the Colt 45 used to be my service revolver when I was a young lieutenant. So when the opportunity came to go to Colt, I was like, yeah, why not? Bend my arm, I'll go to Colt. And I was in charge of all the government things. So they lost the contract for the M4. The M16 is now the M4, and I won that contract. So that was a big deal then. So that was good for the company. And then I left there, and then I went to Remington, a competitor, and that was in near Utica in Ilion, and saw that company. What a history that company had. Now, unfortunately, like everything, they closed that down.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're making, I guess, the guns in North Carolina, or
Mm-hmm.
somebody offered a better deal. And that was it. And then I said enough. I
Then
had
you
enough
said
of
enough?
work. And I had enough of work, enough of the stress. Civilian they're both stressful, but different stress. I mean, civilian is all just you're as good as your last result. No safety in numbers,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I had enough of that stress. I think I was really heavy. I was not healthy. I'm like 285 pounds, and I was like stressed out, eating
You mean when
badly.
you retired, you were?
When I was retired, when I was working for all these companies, because the stress, you work like 12,
You
14
look
hours.
great
You
right
work
now.
a thing. Well, thank you. That's a lot of help, a lot of churchful living.
So you've been all around the world, this big military career. What is it about the States that makes it great coming back to the United States?
Well, it's the greatest country in the world, and I don't say that facetiously.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there. So if you've traveled all the world and you think somebody is better, God bless you. But
Mm-hmm.
I've been all over the world, and people think differently. People act differently. They have different opinions. They are not the same as us. If you think that, then I got some real estate I could sell you. The United States is the best country in the world, the best opportunities, uh, the best values, the best try to fair play. We're not perfect, but I love the United States, and I think I learned that when I went to Iran, when I went on that trip, that wrestling trip as a 17-year-old. You know, I originally accepted because I thought I was going to learn some new tricks. You know, oh, the Iranians are really good wrestlers. You know, I'm going to learn something new that Spencerport doesn't know. You know, so I'm going to put it on Spencerport, and
Right.
crank it.
Right.
No, I didn't learn anything new. But I did learn that the United States was great because uh, it was unbelievable. I mean, just yeah, I'm not suitable for podcast, but anyway, just they have different cultures, different mythology, different things they think, and the food, the air, the pollution, customs, everything were so foreign to a 17-year-old that
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe it. And in hindsight, I'm glad I went because that was another real, you look at little pinpoints in your life that changed you. That changed me. So when I came home, my parents were looking weird because I literally, when I came down on the airport here, in, I guess it's Frederick Douglass Airport now, but the county airport, I got off the steps and I literally kissed the tarmac.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents are like, "What the hell?" And I begged them, just give me a Burger King Whopper. I was into Whoppers. Same thing at West Point. I told them first time I saw them, bring me a Whopper. I got to have a Whopper.
Mm-hmm.
But and that changed my direction. One of the reasons I went to West Point too was based on what I was seeing, and I went around the world. So I lived 6 years in Germany. Loved it. Um, Love Germany, but it's not home. They are different, and it's just the way. And I spoke German at the time, and my dad was German. My grandmother was German. She was hoping that I married a blonde hair, blue eye, girl, and went back to Germany because my dad left. His only son left Germany, so she was hoping I'd marry somebody there. In fact, my sister Monika lives in Stuttgart. So my Oma died a long time ago, but I'm sure she's very proud of Monika staying in Germany and teaching with the Dodds. So she teaches in the defense school system. So she's on a military base, and it's like mini America. That's my last assignment was kind of like mayor of Stuttgart for the Army and Navy and all the forces that were in Stuttgart. So I had my own police force, my own engineers, DPW, fire department, airfield, had all those things. So kind of like a city manager. It was pretty thing with the schools too. I'm trying to call. Scariest thing I never had to do was call a snow day. I did not want to call a snow day.
Because
I
if you
didn't
don't,
because if I goofed up,
yeah.
Colonel Juergens called a snow day. There's not a drop of snow on here. And I'd be, oh my God, my office would get called. Oh, Juergens this. Or if I didn't call it, it'd be the latter. Why didn't you call it? Knucklehead. So going back to states. So I lived there. That was nice. I've been all the world, Middle East and everything. All of them are different. All of them that think they're the best. But I just know from my own family's unique history, coming here and then living here, serving our country, seeing all the opportunities. Um, I was saying earlier, like my wife Tish, I said I met when I was 14, and then I came back and we met and got married and been happily married for almost 8 years now, and we got 2 grandchildren, Haley and Mia, and that's probably why I look good because she was over. We babysat on Tuesday, so Mia keeps me going. Like, Grandpa, push me. I'm sitting. I'm like, how many times can I push this swing? But get your joints moving. I'm working out, But so for 8 years we're doing that, and going back to the U.S. So somebody was asking me. One of Tish's friends was asking me, like, oh, tell me about your career, and I'm like, well, being a typical military person, we think like assignments. So I was assigned here. I lived in Michigan. I lived in Massachusetts. I lived in Maryland. I visited, Japan. I lived in Hawaii, Florida, Panama. And they're like, wow. And said, where do you live now? I said, Churchville. And they said, well, where'd you start? And I said, Hilton. She goes, well, you didn't get very far. I was laughing. I go, yeah, you're right. I did. I started in Hilton and I ended up in Churchville, and it's just kind of like little replicas, Churchville, we're on the west side. So
tell me a little bit. Tell us about your the parade tomorrow night. Aren't you going to be involved in that?
I'm okay. So my classmate, who's a very is a good friend of mine, and she was one of our class leaders, Sue Mullen. Her brother Kyle, her little brother, is a Legionnaire, and he was at the county meeting on Monday, and he goes, "Hey, we got the Hilton Parade," and you've covered many times on your podcast. Hilton Parade, Hilton Carnival is everybody's touch mark. If they canceled the Hilton Carnival, I think they did one year, right? And I think
the weather was so
we
bad.
almost died or something. But I mean, that's the hallmark of you growing up. I was telling you, I remember cleaning up after the fairgrounds. You get there at 5 a.m. and you're picking up beer cans, and you find a $5 or $10 bill, and you're like the richest person in the world. So he asked me at the county meeting, hey, we got a big trailer, put seats and all the old farts, like, us. We just sitting there and wave across. I said, well, I haven't done that since like when I was a Weblo or Weeblo, in Cub Scouts, when, you got the old Super 8s. I got an old film of us marching in the Hilton Parade. I was like, I haven't done that. Okay, I'll go do that. That'll be fun. So I'll be on the trailer.
Good.
So all you people, you won't see it beforehand, but we'll have to wave at the American Legion. I'll be representing Churchville in the Hilton American Legion.
Well, Colonel, I'm glad you made it back to the States, and even though you're in Churchville, it sounds like you'll always have Hilton in your heart.
No, I will.
And I think you came highly recommended to be on the podcast, and I'm honored to have you on and to get to know you better. And
well, thank you, Mike.
Recognize your leadership.
I appreciate doing this, and I hope I didn't bore you too much with
because
stories.
I feel like we could talk another 3 or 4 hours, and I could learn more things about you.
Well, I don't know if you want to ask Tish. Tish said you probably know all you want to know about him, but no, she keeps me on my toes. She's the love of my life. Like I said, I've known her since I was 14, so it's just weird. We're together, and I love Hilton. I love the community. I love Hilton. I love being in Western New York. I love being here, and it's great to be home because I was gone for so long, and my roots were always here.
Well, stay healthy. And
I will.
Colonel Ken Juergens, thank you for joining me on the Big H podcast. Your story is impressive and inspirational. Hilton is very proud of you. Please join me on Fox, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts at the Big H Podcast. Thank you.
Ooh.
The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find. The Big H Podcast, tune in now.